Ian,
Sir.
you know that I love following influencers, especially in the retro gaming sphere.
Yeah, you love it.
So I saw this account that I follow called I think Grape Aid Fade. So they were responding to an announcement from Atari that I believe I don't want to put words in Grape Aid Fade's mouth, but it said the Atari 2600 Plus is announced, and dare I say, looks good? Question mark.
I mean, dare I say, with a question point.
So
question mark.
And I trust Grape Aid Fade with for their retro game views. So the 2600 Plus was announced and got some buzz.
Let me start this one because you're going to start the other one here.
I already started
it. I made the quote. I have no problem with saying that. Not everything's a hit. It was early and I saw it, and immediately, I think partially in my brain, I was confusing. I was thinking that at this point, if someone's going to do something like that, it's going to be to improve upon what's out there, which I guess is, certainly not something I ever should have assumed from Atari. I have no problem. If this was an FPGA console, which we'll get to, it's not. If this was an FPGA console that did what it said it was going to do, yeah, I would stand by my statement. I would. I don't care if it's $129. I don't care if anyone thinks there's a market for it. For people who play Atari, I would still say, yeah, good job. I mean, that's totally fine by me. Do it FPGA, let it play 2600, let it play 7800, and stuff like that. Probably an hour, even before Pat decided he was going to rightfully rag on me.
I didn't do it publicly. I don't ever go after people's tweets for people I know. So I messaged him.
I mean, you could have. It's an incredibly non-important thing that would not have mattered to me. I
was in not shock, but I was just like, aghast that Ian tweeted.
Well, like I said, you have to understand that I was very confused on it, and I was making some very big assumptions that I should not have made.
Sure.
Like I said, because in my mind, why would someone put something out that is going to suck or not improve on previous things? And here's my thing. And this is also why I think I got excited. I have experience with a prior attempt at doing something like this, which is the Retron 77. And the Retron 77 is one of the most giant pieces of shit we've ever had at Luna, to the point where we just don't, we stopped selling them almost immediately. Controllers were faulty, units were faulty, but more importantly, the compatibility of the games was atrocious. Basically, what we encountered was that most of the games that people wanted to play, and we can expand on this too, would not work or would not function properly. And the reason why is because, and I did not know this at the time, the emulator that it's using does not support, I believe it's called bank switching, which is a programming trick that many of the better, more memorable Atari 2600 games, especially from companies like Activision, use. So even if the overall compatibility rate is relatively high for something like the Hyperkin, which I think was I think you had told me it was like 75 or 80%. The 20% of games that aren't working are probably among the ones that people want to work the most.
So the Retron 77 uses, I guess it's one of the more popular ones or modern ones. I don't know. I'm not into the scene. It's called Stella.
Stella was kind of like INES.
Stella.
But Stella's always been around. It's been very popular. And it's been like the only Atari 2600 emulator that anyone has really stuck with and put a lot of work into.
So the good news we'll get into, the good and bad news. Good and bad. There's the bad news. This Atari 2600 Plus is also using Stella, from what I was told, because the compatibility issues are exactly the fucking same here.
Which means, and I'll just let me be clear here, that means it's going to be shit, and you should not buy it.
Well, the Retron 77 has 4.5 stars on Amazon. I think for most people it should be okay, but yes, if you're a hardcore into, you have like the library of like the Activision games, and Star Wars Arcade.
The people who bought these, at least at Luna, were not hardcore. These were casual players, and unfortunately, the games that casual players want to play don't work.
But the compatibility of Stella is probably a lot better now than 6 years ago when this came out. That's the thing.
Okay.
So here's the good news. So let's break down what the 2600 Plus has first. So you get one controller, one joystick. You get a 4-switcher that's a little bit compressed. One of the features is that widescreen mode is a feature. I don't know who'd want to play Atari in widescreen mode, but it's an emulator. You can do it. Whatever.
Bad people.
Enlarged cartridge socket reduces sticking. Sometimes it is hard to get out of the old Atari 600. You want to. And the Atari logo lights up when being played. I think the VCS did the same thing. The computer VCS. You are buying an Android box with an emulator.
That's all you're doing.
That's what you are doing. Which is this? This is the guts of this would be the same as getting a Retron 77.
Yep.
And why is that problematic? This is why. This comes from Atari themselves, who was controlling the name. You would think that the namesake would go above and beyond a little bit, and they haven't.
Exactly.
They haven't.
Yeah.
And this is why.
And that goes back to my initial tweet. I just kind of assumed, and I never should have done it with Atari or one of these consoles, but I just assumed they would have done the work to make it the reference point for future.
And they did
get it right.
This is not an like Ian said, this is not an FPGA. They didn't come up with their own emulator. They did the bare fucking minimum, which we'll get into.
They designed a nice case.
Because see, Ian is actually less cynical, I guess, than me, which is good. But when I first saw this, I said, "What's fucked up about this?" And I looked into it immediately because this is Atari. Remember, this is Atari who've been disasters mostly the past 10 years with this shit, with the NFTs, with the casino, with the crypto garbage, and now with overpriced cartridges, re-released cartridges that we'll get into. So you get the one controller. Remember, this costs almost double what the Retron 77 will get you for the same.
130 as opposed to, I think,
75.
70.
Yeah, which is 75, which also has one joystick, which is actually a better joystick because it has the curves in the end so you can hold it easier. I do like that on the Retron joystick.
No, the Retron joystick looked nice. It's just a garbage system.
And you get, this is actually Los Cojones. You get a multi-cart with 10 games, all right? Adventure, combat, Dodge 'em, Haunted House, Maze Craze, Missile Command, Real Sports Volleyball. They always like throwing that one in a later one that no one actually had.
Because it's good. It's a good game.
But no one actually had it who had an Atari. Right. Surround, Video Pinball, early one, and Yars Revenge. That's a decent lineup. It's a fucking multi-cart with switches. Atari couldn't even put the money into developing a real multi-cart with like a fucking menu. And
okay, see, I thought the switches, I thought you hit the switches on the front of the Atari.
No, Ian, this is an old school multi-cart that they're making in the 2000s, like the original multi-carts that Hobbyist is. There are switches on the cartridge, which would mean to switch a game, take that fucker out, look at the combination of switches on the cart. This is prehistoric shit in the retro gaming community. This is stuff people did in garages. And Atari couldn't have a programmer do a fucking multi-cart with a menu. Again, you know why? Because this is using an off-the-shelf emulator that it's not FPGA, and they probably would have issues with that. Probably.
Yep.
No, probably.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I was
probably
like,
couldn't. I mean, honestly, the acceptable cart size for an Atari probably would have. I'm assuming that's why. But again, if you're using an emulator and you're not doing an FPGA system, then find the bypass, find the workaround.
Yes. So as like Ian said before, thank you for bringing it up, Ian. And I talked to our pal Kedrich, said the same thing. There's no bank switching in games, which also means there's no larger games, like the 8 kilobyte games, like whatever, Super Cobra Command and like Star Wars Arcade. The more complex games you will not be able to run for the most part on this, which sucks. So Atari, to their credit, which I'll get into why this is horseshit though, has on their website a compatibility list that is fucking laughable for a couple of different reasons. It has a compatibility list where they have things that I just lost it. What happened to the compatibility list? It says instantly compatible with hundreds of Atari's original games. You got to scroll down, Ian, for it. But then it says download the PDF. The PDF comes up, and they have published by Atari, which is interesting because it's like these games weren't all published by Atari, but whatever. I mean, the list is published by Atari. It's for 2600 and 7800. They have pass, untested, and fail. The amount of games they have that are untested, finger pat quotes, is about 15%, maybe 20% of the games. 15%, we'll just say, are untested. And they only have like Super Cobra, not Super Cobra, Super Cobra. They have as a big fat F on that. And they have like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a big fat F. But Star Wars the arcade game, which based upon our knowledge of this being Stella, probably does not work, they have untested. So I will...
Right, they just don't want to say that it doesn't work.
Yes. This list is fucking horseshit. That they had the balls to say that they had a fucking rare, real Texas Chainsaw Massacre cartridge around, something that can go for $800 or $1,000. You're trying to tell me they had that and tested that and failed it, but they couldn't get it, whatever it costs, a $40 Star Wars arcade game
also,
cart?
They did a really good job of hiding this on the page because I still don't fucking see it anywhere, and I've scrolled through the FAQ.
It's on the main page. You scroll down.
2600 plus main page?
Yes, you scroll down.
Okay.
And when it says hundreds of games, then you, instantly compatible, then beneath it says download the game. So you're right, Ian. You're right. I didn't even say that. It is a little hidden. It's a little hidden. You want me to drop in the actual list for you? You still got it? You got it.
Yes, please, because I cannot find it anywhere.
So there you go.
I'm looking at the hundreds of games.
So now I'm pissed at Atari. I'm pissed because I'm not saying Ian got fooled, but at least he was semi-bamboozled for a second via his tweet.
Where did you put it?
I just put it underneath. List of games.
Thank you. Oh, that's a Shopify link. That's why I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I guess it's a Shopify store. So
Okay.
Ian was a little tricked. My pal Joe DeRosa, who grew up with the Atari 2600, great comedian, great podcaster, who actually had the Atari BCS. I'm not dumping on Joe, but Joe was like, "Hey Pat, this looks good. I ordered it." And I had to go, "Oh Joe, there's some things you have to know about this." So they're going to get the casual people that won't look into this stuff as much or not know that it's emulator based, for example, that won't know that there's a hidden compatibility list down there you have to find. Because I think Kevtris told me about the list. So this is a problem. But what makes this even a bigger problem, Ian, is the Retron 5, for all its faults, has an SD card slot, which means that you can not only update the emulator Stella, which you would have to if you bought one off the shelf today. You mean
the Retron 77? You said Retron 5.
Retron 77. You could update it like that console. You can update things on it, firmware, and load ROMs. So you could be able to load on all the Atari ROMs. So it's almost like the cartridge slot would almost be secondary. Who the hell cares? At least I have a nice little machine for $75 that does HDMI out and does that. I don't see any evidence on this that I can do it because it's not fucking listed. All I see is a CG render of the console, and there's nothing I see in here that even says you can connect it to like an SD card about that. But why would Atari want you to load your own ROMs? Of course, because one of my main issues with this, and this is where I think this is craven, is that they want to get you into. They want to reboot a 50-year-old, 55-year-old cartridge ecosystem, Atari. That they started doing with their collectible versions the last year or two, that we ragged on the prices of these Atari carts being like $60 fucking dollars, that the marketing was wrong on the website. They credited Howard Scott Warshaw for shit he didn't do, and just it was a mess. They want you to now go and buy these new game packs and buy these games so you can play on your new Atari 2600 Plus.
Let me just double check that I'm right on this. Hold on. This is going to drive me insane. Where is that compatibility list now? Where did I put it? Here it is. So tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm not. So there's games that aren't even on this list that were Atari published. Obviously, there's no full repository of games, but like I'm looking for some of the stuff that people would genuinely want to play on here. Some of the better games. Pitfall works, but Pitfall 2 is untested. I immediately wanted to look up Solaris, which is one of the best Atari games, and it's an Atari made and published game, and it's not even on the list because I guarantee you that does not work at all.
What's even stranger is this. It says on the list, Ian, in parentheses, some of these games are cassette games. So you're telling me I can attach an Atari supercharger, the attachment to put the cassette. You're telling me I can do this on this? I don't think you can. I'd love to be shown how. I think they just tested that in the emulator that's on the Atari 2600 Plus.
Right.
They're claiming I can play cassette games on this? Prove me wrong, Atari.
It's really weird.
It's really, I don't think it's true.
No, I'd love to be proven either.
I love to be proven wrong on it.
And then just randomly, games like I'm just noticing stuff that's not here at all. Taz is not on here.
So you're saying the list is even complete?
Solaris is not on here.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me see. Is Star Raiders on here?
So you're saying there's untested things on this list that aren't even on this list. Like they didn't go. They only listed a certain amount.
Okay. Star Raiders, one of the most that game was.
It's not on the list
when it came out. Not on the list.
Jesus Christ. Okay. This is worse than I thought. Then I was given the benefit.
This list is.
We're not talking about
funny because this list is handpicked to make it look good, and it doesn't look good. And then as soon as you just start peeling back layers, there's all sorts of games that people want to play on here that I'm trying to look up that just aren't on here because they don't fucking work. Or
how the hell do they have
very weird?
How the hell do they have Chase the Chuck Wagon and Tax Avoiders, but they don't have Star Raiders on the list?
Oh no, there's Star Raiders.
They did? Okay, they do have it. Okay.
Oh, okay. It's weird because they fucking change how they.
Okay,
this is published by Atari, published by a third party, published by a third. Okay, so that's my bad.
Oh, I see.
My bad.
That's what the headers are. Gotcha. Okay, I was gonna say that'd be bizarre.
And Solaris is here and it passed, so I do have to correct myself on that. They did not make the list easy to read.
But an Activision game like Popeye is untested.
Right, and same with like Pitfall 2. And I guarantee you, how thorough is their pass? Did they pop the cartridge in and make sure it turned on? That's probably it. Did they play it? Are there any other issues that pop up when you start playing the games? Because I had people tell me that was the case with the Hyperkin, that they would power up a game and then it would start and then something would happen. It would freeze. It would display wrong. I definitely remember Pitfall 2 being one of the reasons the guy returned the system, though. Well, he's like, if it can't play this, he's like, I don't want it.
I just think it's funny as hell that, again, this is bullshit. You're telling me they couldn't get a Star Wars arcade game, one of the probably technically better, superior games, but they passed some of these other esoteric third-party games. That's like, you had that laying around, really? Or you know what I mean? You really, like, again, it's anyway. So this is where it becomes craven. This is where it becomes unacceptable. Two things. One, you get one joystick, and they want you to spend $25 on a second. Two, they want you to spend $40 to get the paddle controllers, two of them,
with 4 games,
with another Switch multi-cart, another. So they want you
4 games, 4.
So they want you to spend $65, really, plus the $130 to get the true. Remember the true
Atari.
Yeah, remember when you got a 2600 back in the day, you got those paddles. They fucking threw that shit in for you. When you got it way back in the day.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, way back. I think in the original, like way back. Correct me wrong. Like if you got the original release. So, but here's the other thing they don't tell you, or you don't realize that. Some people won't realize that out of the box, you won't be able to. Like, yeah, I can fire up a 1700 game, but I can't play it with this fucking joystick with one button. For some of these games, you need 2 buttons. So like this is just, it's so ballsy. To me to do this, like to advertise 700 games when you know that when you get this, I'm shocked that they don't have a 700 controller for sale. Do they not realize that some of those games you need 2 buttons for that? It's nuts to me that they have a joystick and don't have 2 buttons. The Retron 77 controller, I believe, has 2 buttons on it, which I think is just for ambidextrous people. But I wouldn't be shocked if you could maybe configure it for that. So the whole thing to me is just awash with problems. And here's the other thing. If you want to satisfy the itch of just having an HDMI compatible console, you can get that. The last flashback, the Atari 50th flashback has 130 games on it. 130 games, including third-party Activision ones, 2 controllers, and 2 paddles for $83. It's on Prime right now. And I think for 95% of Atari fans, that might be enough. Because you're going to get all the Atari games, you're going to get all the Activision games that I loved, like Keystone Capers and Pitfall, and you're going to get out of the box 2 players for paddle games and for Atari games. Like that to me overall would be my solution. If you didn't want to go through trying to like fucking hack or add ROMs to a Retron 77, like that's the way I would go versus this 2600 plus. That's me.
Yeah, I agree.
So
that's probably the best way to do it.
So like I said,
because they've got games that won't run on, yeah, I don't know.
So like I said, like that's what really got me was a combination of one controller. This thing is overpriced. Switch games, literal physical switches on these multi-carts, and the fact that I think they are not telling you the truth about compatibility, and they really want people that aren't in the know to buy the same fucking hardware that they bought when they were 10 years old in 1980 or 1979, having to spend $40 on a 4 fucking cart multi-cart. They could have came out with the 2600 plus, Ian, for $130 and say we're gonna have 50 games built in, or 40 games built in. We're gonna do the same thing we did with the VCS Android box, and we're gonna throw in some games for you because we own
Even
these.
if it was emulation,
games.
if it was just a flashback with a cartridge slot, like that would have been
better,
acceptable, more acceptable at least.
Yeah, if they gave you 130 games or 100 games that they own, not to say they relicense the Activision ones, because obviously the flashback folks did Act games, but if they had given you 100 built-in games and the cartridge slot, like you said, because there is an older flashback that has a cartridge slot.
I have one, I believe, at my place. No, I think I might have given it away to someone, but I had one under my bed forever that I got from Luna. That was the one that had the solder points on the board to add a cartridge slot.
Sure, there was a point where you could do that for like 1 or 2 iterations. So there you go. That's all I got to say about that. I just think it's don't be fooled by Atari. That's all I'm going to say. They got to do better.